Watch closely as an arrogant socialite steps into the courtroom of a no-nonsense judge and walks away with a lesson she never forget. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs that morning as people shuffled to their seats. It was a typical day at the Los Angeles County Courthouse, except for one detail. Today's hearing was expected to draw quite the crowd. Tiffany Halstead, a wealthy socialite infamous for her reckless behavior and inflated sense of self, was about to face Judge William Grant. Known for his sharp intellect and unshakable demeanor, Judge Grant wasn't one to tolerate disrespect or excuses. Tiffany arrived, predictably late, dressed in designer labels and oversized sunglasses. She strolled into the courtroom as though she were attending a glamorous gala, not a legal hearing. Her lawyer, visibly nervous, hurried behind her, trying to keep the scene under control. The room fell silent. All eyes were on Tiffany as she paused in the aisle, seemingly unaware or indifferent to the people waiting for her to take her seat. With a dramatic wave, she motioned for her lawyer to step aside while she placed her designer bag on the bench. Removing her sunglasses with exaggerated flair, she glanced around, her expression radiating entitlement. To her, this courtroom and the proceedings were beneath her. Moments later, Judge William Grant entered the courtroom, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. Murmurs ceased, replaced by a respectful hush. In his mid-50s, Judge Grant was an imposing figure, tall with a commanding presence. His sharp gaze swept across the room before he sat down. All rise, the bailiff announced. Tiffany hesitated, her irritation evident, before reluctantly standing. Her heavy sigh and annoyed expression screamed, "Why am I even here?" Unfazed, Judge Grant adjusted his glasses and opened the case file. Tiffany's charges were straightforward: multiple parking violations compounded by an incident of reckless driving that endangered a pedestrian. But what could have been a routine hearing was about to take an unexpected turn thanks to Tiffany's arrogance. As Judge Grant began listing the charges, Tiffany leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and rolled her eyes, a blatant show of disrespect. The courtroom's atmosphere grew tense as spectators noticed her behavior. Still, Judge Grant remained calm and professional, his tone measured and deliberate. It was as if he was daring Tiffany to continue her act. Tiffany began tapping her manicured nails against the wooden table, loud enough to draw attention. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently, but she waved him off dismissively. When Judge Grant asked her to confirm her identity, Tiffany barely glanced up. "Yeah, that's me," she said, her tone dripping with indifference. A murmur rippled through the room. Judge Grant's calm gaze lingered on her for a moment. "Miss Halstead," he said, his voice steady, "in this courtroom, we maintain a certain level of decorum. I suggest you adjust your tone accordingly." Tiffany smirked. "Sure thing, Your Honor," she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. Gasps echoed softly through the room. Even her lawyer buried his face in his hands, mortified. Judge Grant pressed on, unfazed. "Miss Halstead, do you understand the charges brought against you today?" Tiffany rolled her eyes again, honestly. "No, it's just some dumb parking tickets and what? Someone got scared because I hit the gas too hard." "This is a waste of time." The courtroom fell silent. All eyes were now on Judge Grant. Slowly, he closed the case file and removed his glasses, setting them down deliberately. "Miss Halstead," he said, his voice calm but heavy with authority, "I would advise you to choose your words carefully from this point forward." But Tiffany wasn't done. She shrugged. "What? It's true. It's not like I hurt anyone. This whole thing is ridiculous." The judge's silence was deafening. The room braced for what was to come. "Miss Halstead," Judge Grant began, "do you recall the incident that brought you here today?" Tiffany shrugged again. Some guy stepped off the curb. "I honked. He moved." End of story. Judge Grant raised his eyebrows. End of story. He flipped through the file before addressing the courtroom. "Let the record show," he announced, "that the pedestrian, Mr. Edward Lopez, is a 67-year-old retired teacher. He was crossing the street legally when Miss Halstead accelerated toward him, causing him to stumble and injure his wrist. He has since required medical attention and continues to experience pain." For the first time, Tiffany's smirk faltered. She glanced at her lawyer, who whispered something urgently, but she ignored him. "I didn't hit him," she muttered. He was fine. Judge Grant's voice grew firmer. Miss Halstead, does this sound like no harm, no foul to you? Tiffany opened her mouth to respond, but Judge Grant continued. Your dismissal of this man's pain speaks volumes about your character. However, this courtroom does not exist to humiliate. It exists to uphold justice and teach lessons when necessary. Judge Grant leaned forward, his presence commanding. Miss Halstead, in addition to fines and 200 hours of community service, you will spend the next 30 days volunteering at the downtown women's shelter. There, you will work directly with individuals facing hardship. Perhaps you'll gain the perspective you clearly lack. A gasp spread through the room. Tiffany's face turned pale. You've got to be kidding me, she exclaimed. Judge Grant remained unshaken. Miss Halstead, this is not a punishment. It's an opportunity for growth. Failure to comply will result in far harsher consequences. Tiffany opened her mouth to protest but closed it again, silenced by the weight of the moment. As the hearing concluded, the courtroom emptied. Mr. Lopez passed Tiffany on his way out, his expression calm but resolute. Tiffany avoided his gaze, staring down at the table in front of her. Outside, reporters swarmed her, cameras flashing. For once, Tiffany had no clever quips or defiant remarks. Reality had finally begun to set in. And that's how privilege collided with justice in the courtroom of Judge William Grant. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to Unfolded Tales Explained and press the bell icon so you never miss a new video. See you next time.